Hey there, everyone. I am today looking at a Grand Theft Auto Liberty City story, specifically The Lost and the Damned and The Ballad of Gay Tony. I think I might have said in my GTA 4 review I was not going to look at the DLC, but that's because I never actually played it. And typically DLC, again, it adds maybe 5 or 6 or maybe 10 hours to the original campaign, and sometimes it's not worth talking about, but I think this one actually is. The main reason I even started playing this DLC is because the Xbox Live Store is, of course, closing, and so, or the marketplace rather, and so the ability to actually play this is going to kind of go away. So I thought, well, I might as well play this, and I just remembered back in the day, kind of like a trip, just the actual trailer for these two games, but specifically Gay Tony, is still one of my favorite trailers. Not only the music, but the editing, the cuts, everything. It's cinematically something I'm very interested in as a technique and as a way to actually advertise games. They just don't make trailers like that anymore. And it's funny that a lot of the comments on that Gay Tony trailer video were essentially that, the GTA 6, this is what it should have been. And so right off the bat, what's my impression of The Lost and the Damned and Gay Tony? Well, first of all, what's very interesting, I guess, about the trailers is that there is pretty much no profanity in the trailers themselves, or any curse words or slurs or anything. And then you start the game, and it is nothing but curse words and slurs. And I'll just put it out there right now. I don't know how anyone can stream The Ballad of a Gay Tony in modern age because, they have every slur, racial, sexual, every kind of offensive language you can imagine is in this game, to the point where I'm almost impressed. Like, if you had to actually look at video games and look at the game that actually has the most offensive, wording or content, this game, or this DLC specifically, has to be the one that's up there, because it is actually so ridiculous. Yeah, it's it was just like, wow, I didn't realize they could, it's a shocking they could make the back then, but even now, I think even streaming this would be an interesting challenge, I suppose. But what is the premise of Lost and Damned and Gay Tony? Well, first with Lost and Damned, you're part of a motorcycle club, and specifically a chapter of the Angels of Death instead of Hell's Angels, or rather, I think that's their rival game. I forget what the gang is literally called. I just actually played it, but I can't remember that. But they're a motorcycle gang, whatever. I think they're just called the Lost. And so basically, their leader gets out of jail and he comes back to the crib, and they, welcome him, get his bike back, and you kind of run the gang and run the drug business, and some diamonds are involved, and you basically have to regrow the gang and gain control. And there's a whole twist there where the leader gets, kind of set up, basically, and you, as the up-and-coming guy in the club, need to help him out, basically. That being said, The Ballad of Gay Tony, you are essentially a hired bodyguard / hitman, and you're working for the titular Gay Tony, who you call affectionately Tone, and who basically owns the nightclub business in Liberty City. And so he basically gets into a bunch of shenanigans. And I have to say that something I really do like from a storytelling perspective about these DLCs is how they intersect with the main story of GTA 4 and also each other. The DLCs, the characters reoccur, and you kind of, don't really know much about them. In fact, it's funny, in The Lost and the Damned, there's a whole diamond heist that goes down, and Gay Tony is in that cutscene, but he doesn't have his iconic glasses. So obviously they were working out some kinks, did some redesigns as things were progressing, and it's just really interesting to see that kind of, take place, so to speak. So there are some interesting things about these DLCs. The main thing that I really enjoyed that was addressed is the lack of weapon variety. I was really woefully, dismayed by the fact that in the base game of GTA 4, you did not really have a great variety of weapons. I mean, yeah, okay, you had all the good stuff, but things like jetpacks and chain guns and over-the-top ridiculous weapons were kind of absent. Here, they've kind of fixed that a little bit. Lost in the Damned has some really cool things like an automatic pistol, sawed-off shotgun, fully automatic striker shotgun, pipe bombs and things like that. And Gay Tony takes it to a whole new level. Gay Tony, actually, I think it reminds me almost a little bit of Saints Row. It kind of has that purple yellow aesthetic and this whole sort of affluent aspect. It's not as grimy and as trashy as Lost and Damned. And so basically, you have things like, silenced P90s and grenade launchers, golden Uzis, sleek 44 Magnum pistols, really cool stuff that really kind of not only give the DLC its own flair, but the characters itself. And what I really kind of appreciated, that was kind of a bold move, I'd say, is that the weapons in the Gay Tony DLC are kind of exclusive to that, with little crossover to the Lost and Damned DLC. So you feel like not only the characters have a distinct personalities, a distinct aesthetic, but they also have a very distinct move set, if you could call it that, a distinct weaponry and arsenal that is tied to that character, which I think is really smart and really cool. Another thing that I really, again, was conflicted with is that in Lost and Damned, even though you get the sawed-off shotgun, you can only have one type of shotgun. And while I can use the sawed-off, while on the motorcycle, which is very iconic, the Striker was just so cool, I wanted to keep that one, but you just can't use it on your bike, which was kind of disappointing. Regardless itself, the DLCs themselves, I mean, I was never really a huge fan of GTA 4 to begin with. It really lands in the middle area for me. It's not a terrible game per se, because it's still, good, but it just was never as iconic and as fun, and honestly as over the top and crazy as, San Andreas and Vice City. And it's really interesting, though, that now that I've played GTA 3 and coming back to Liberty City after so long, it's interesting. It's interesting to see the differences between these two kinds of environments, and how GTA 3 felt really, really distinct and interesting, and GTA 4 feels, I'm not sure how to put it. It feels definitely different. And maybe it's the radio stations, which I just have to point out. The radio station in this game is definitely my favorite aspect of it. All the commercials apparently are written by the Laszlo guy, and he is the funniest. It is some of the funniest stuff I've ever heard. Within 5 seconds, I'm laughing at some ridiculous, movie trailer for, a CGI machine that's gone off the rails. And it's so smart and so funny, and it's so weird as well, because to contrast that, they have things like that you can go to an actual comedy club in the downtown, and the dialogue for that is absolutely awful. It's nothing like the actual TV shows and the radio stations. They're just so good, so funny, so amazing. Another cool weapon I forgot, you also get like a full-on machine gun, like an LMG, which is just crazy. And so, yeah, basically the overall stories is, you also have the reoccurring characters from the previous base game and the other DLCs, and they appear as characters that you do work for and stuff. So you play as, Billy and Johnny. You play as Johnny, and Billy is, the leader of your chapter. You're these Jewish bikers in this biker gang. And so, yeah, it's about, selling drugs and, selling diamonds, and, things go south and everyone gets, double backstabbed, and it's the whole, typical story. And then you have, rival gangs show up and all that kind of stuff. Again, the dialogue is just, just very crass and very crude. And, the thing with GTA 4 is that, they kind of gone for a more realistic approach. So, the guns are very loud, very kind of, well, honestly, headache-inducing by the end of the whole campaign. I was very much kind of, in a massive headache. It was just a lot. So yeah, Lost and Damned is kind of grimy and, kind of scummy, and a lot of, heavy rock and metal and whatever. While Gay Tony, you have a lot of more club music and different kinds of things. And I actually checked online. They actually added whole new songs just for these DLCs, like a lot of new songs on the radio, and licensed songs too, which I find really surprising. But yeah, it makes sense. Gay Tony's a lot more fun. There's a lot more kind of aerial missions. You're doing a lot more parachuting. There's a bunch of base jumping mini games where you have to jump from a building, parachute, and go onto another thing. like either a moving vehicle or a target, which is kind of cool. Gay Tony will also rank you. This is the first time we kind of see this. It'll rank you on your mission. You can kind of replay it. And I think that was something they might have been doing with Red Dead at the same time. It wasn't really emphasized, but Red Dead also ranked you on your missions. And that would be kind of like a normal thing for GTA 5 and going forward with the whole series. There's some very funny characters in each of these DLCs. My favorite one is probably Yusuf from, Gay Tony, because he's this ultra rich, Saudi, the son of a Saudi sheik who is a complete hedonist in here in Liberty City to just, just engage in every form of corrupt hedonism. And he kind of grows on you at the end because he's actually useful, because he basically makes you rob basically city infrastructure and like really expensive and dangerous vehicles. And he's just a crazy character that, of course, everyone's very crass, and but they eventually kind of grow on you because they're just so ridiculous and over the top. And again, like, Gay Tony feels very much like Saints Row because of that. If I had to choose between these two DLCs, I guess I'd side with Gay Tony just because it's a little bit more engaging. There's a little bit more interesting weapons and things to do. But Lost in the Dam has a pretty interesting story just on loyalty and brotherhood, and what it means to roll in a gang and all that stuff. It's very funny how there's very distinct ethnicities between each group and character. You have the Chinese triads, you have the biker gang, you have the gay mafia with Tony, you have the Italians, the classic mafia, you have the Haitians, I think. And, each kind of, segment has their own way of doing things and their own kind of code of conduct. And it's interesting to see the characters interact. You also have the Jews in this one, like very, very like Orthodox Jews, which is interesting. Which is, I mean, it's interesting because Billy and Johnny are Jews themselves, apparently, but they're obviously not Orthodox. So there's a lot of, a lot of really interesting nuances I didn't expect going into this. For example, in the motorcycle, bike club, they've got one guy in a wheelchair, which is like, oh, wow, I didn't think that would be like an idealized thing, but it's not, because GTA is kind of trying to portray reality in a certain way. But yeah, just on that point, Gay Tony, the entire DLC is so funny because you play as this Latino guy, and he's very much like, like that's part of his persona, that he has his old Latino friends that he rolls with and does drug deals with, and he has to take care of his mom, who always cooks Mexican food and all this stuff. And he's like a proud Latino guy, and it's just so funny where if you told me that Grand Theft Auto was going to make a game about a diversity cast of all these different ethnicities, and you're working for a gay like club owner in modern era, like, it would sound like a totally awful idea, and the whole sort of diversity that we're used to is just always garbage content. But Rockstar simply does not care, and they're able to make this like years before this really became a thing. This was like maybe 2010. And so they had this completely diverse cast, and, like wheelchairs and, different ethnicities and, different sexualities and everything. But the tone they take with everything is basically F you, we're tough. And it's about, different competing factions. And like, there really is no good guy in any of these scenarios. It's just everyone's kind of out for themselves, and you're just kind of seeing all of the travesty, I guess, of their misunderstandings and their kind of their conflicts, and they're just their rage, and this the fact that they all kind of just hate the hell out of each other. I find it really funny that, again, it has the same kind of layout that you'd expect from a modern game that wouldn't succeed, but GTA is able to make it succeed because Rockstar understands, from a writing perspective, that people want violence and conflict and interesting characters and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know what else to say besides that, except that everything is pretty essentially masculine in a sense. It's all about conflict and just shooting your way out of most of your situations. I find it to be very funny in that sense. Of course, the classic GTA 4 physics are back in this one. I forgot what it felt like to, hit a speed bump and have your car flip over. And honestly, it's almost a little bit too much. I understand that physics were kind of like a new thing in this series franchise, but it is honestly a little bit ridiculous. For example, there was this triathlon race where you have to go parachute, go into a boat, then take the boat to a car. I was in first place by a mile, and I was going moderately fast. I hit like the curb or like a lamppost or something, and my entire car just flipped just enough to go upside down, and I lost everything. I lost the whole race and had to do it all over again. I got it on the second or third try, but that kind of incredibly unfair physics is just, it's funny and it's fun to see it, and there are some funny things that can happen with it, but at the same token, there is a ton of incredibly frustrating situations that do occur because of that, and it's just like rage-inducing, absolutely rage-inducing. I remember just trying to win one of the motorcycle races in the Lost and Damned. Took me like 20 tries because I'd be in first, or I would hit one thing, and of course with the motorcycle you're ultra fragile and vulnerable, and those were just infuriating to go through, honestly. I did like it, though, that when you do the races, you have, they give you a baseball bat, and they even mention it, it's time to give these guys some road rash, and that's exactly the same mechanic as Road Rash. I love that game. It's a classic thing. I like the reference, but it very quickly wore on me once I realized that the game, or the race itself, was almost impossible. Well, not impossible, but incredibly difficult. Also, another funny little quirk that I noticed was that, despite the Ballad of Gay Tony, it's a funny recurring thing that everyone thinks that Luis is gay, because he works for a gay man, even though he's this super macho dude and he doesn't take, crap from anybody. But what I did find very hilarious is that in The Lost of the Damned, you actually see more naked men than you do in Gay Tony. There's this one politician you have to deal with, and he actually just fully is nude in front of the camera, and they fully rendered his like penis and everything. Usually, like, a lot of games cut that stuff out. Even there's a funny story about God of War 1 where they had to cut out the penis of the was it the Gorgon or something, or one of the ogres or something, and just have a smooth area there, which I find really funny. But in Gay Tony, there's no penis, but in Lost in the Damned there is penis, and I find that to be very funny. I'm sure some people might misremember that as the other way around, but no, that is indeed the case. Again, the mission structure, each one of these DLCs may last you like maybe a day or so. If you just do the main content, the side content could give you definitely a few more hours out of the gameplay. But yeah, the typical thing is you get a cutscene, you get a crazy thing you need to do, an objective, and then, you kind of get a new weapon or a new resource and whatever. I think what's really smart also is how they handled the weapon purchasing in this game, because what they did is they didn't add the new weapons to the existing stores, but instead they had your new contacts through your phone act as, they had these gun vans. And the gun vans, they have these gun vans. And basically what they do is you basically meet them in an alleyway, and then you have this very nice, a lot sleeker and much nicer interface to choose your weapons from and buy them in that way. And so all the new guns just kind of exist in that kind of closed environment. Again, I feel Rockstar's whole philosophy is that they try to give you as many mini games as possible. It's very similar to, I think, a lot of Japanese game designs, like in Zelda or different RPGs where you have little mini games like fishing and whatnot. So you have things like, you can do cage fighting, you can do drug deals, base jumping. It's kind of supposed to be this smorgasbord of different little activities that aren't necessarily made well, but that there's a lot of things that you can do and argue that you did them, and that they're different activities, even though the main aspect of the game is, running and gunning and driving and shooting and all that good stuff. To be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed by the Ballad of Gay Tony, simply because the trailer for it is just so good. I feel like I completely oversold it. I just feel like, honestly, I just wanted the trailer music to be somewhere in the game, And while it wasn't, or maybe it's on the radio, who knows? I kind of wish that the story was just a little bit more interesting, or was more into the theme of this wild, crazy ride you're going on, while instead of this just constant backstabbing that kind of seems to happen. Yeah, these games, they try to portray things as very realistic and grimy, and honestly very like depressing. I kind of really miss old GTA, where at least the main character's trying to make something of himself and all this kind of stuff. But that being said, overall, it's a fun time, I would say. Nothing amazing, but still pretty good. I think it's also cool in Lost in the Damned. Once you've beat one of the main story missions, you can call up your biker guys for backup. That's a really nice touch. That feels really cool. As Louise, you can obviously get a bunch of different vehicles from your friends and do a bunch of other different mini games. You can also do a club management minigame, which I found to be incredibly difficult. I mean, you basically go around and stand in the same 5 places until you walk up to someone and you have a little cutscene that they need to, be taken care of. And then basically they'll have you go on a random quest. One of them was you had to like get a dinner for a supermodel, basically. And those just seem to be really, really difficult. Like, I tried to drive as fast as I could in the car that I had at the time, and I was literally turning around the corner, and like the mission despawned because I took too long. And I did it like a second time, and it was a different kind of objective, but the same thing happened where I just missed, what I was supposed to do. Again, though, I think the best thing I love about this game are the radio stations, Laszlo, all the commercials. They're honestly like some of the funniest content I've ever heard, and a lot of things they predicted too about Hollywood being all CGI. Politicians and just generally, don't buy into negative advertisements and divisive politics. You should listen to me and take down my opponent, and the total hypocrisy. It's honestly one of the best aspects of this game. And also the music selection. There's of course a lot of Rod Stewart on here. At least that's the one I was able to notice. Some Phil Collins, I believe, as well. And I think if you're playing this on newer consoles, that might not be the case because of licensing issues. I know that was definitely the issue. Anyway, the game itself is okay. I kind of really liked the end part of Gay Tony, where you just start to do more and more crazy stuff, and it was a lot more positive and upbeat. Like, Yusuf comes in with an attack helicopter after being a useless kind of bragging hedonistic asshole, and then finally actually help. And so Yusuf actually starts being helpful by the end of the game, and I really like that kind of character shift where he was actually the one helping you for once and using all this crazy equipment that you helped him steal. But yeah, I really liked the end part of Gay Tony because, Yusuf shows up and he's, using all, the attack helicopter and like all this other stuff you helped him steal. And instead of being a useless, whiny hedonist, he's actually helping you out and becoming a team member. It actually feels like really fun in that last few missions. And then it kind of goes back to just being, whatever. Okay, we got the money. Like, that's all that matters. I don't know. I think if I were to redo this, I would make things more over the top, not Saints Row over the top, but I'd make it more, I don't know, more interesting, more ridiculous in certain ways. It's okay. I also really like Gay Tony as a character. He's the, whining, complaining guy who's always worried his life is over, and, quite a lot of times it does look that way. But yeah, it was, Gay Tony is actually a pretty decent DLC. I definitely like it more than the base game by a slight margin, but overall these DLCs are not great because they're built on the GT4 engine and the universe, and I just don't really like GTA 4. It's basically an over-glorified physics simulator with a bunch of incredibly crass and frankly boring, violent people, and trying to depict it as reality. But yeah, there it is, I guess. I don't have much else to say about it. I guess it's worth a shot, but I honestly had the perspective that I was absolutely more than satisfied by just watching the trailers than actually playing the game. So I think that should tell you everything you might need to know. Anyway, with all that said, guys, I'll see you guys later, and maybe pick this up, but definitely watch the trailer. Bye.